Great. Greg, you're seeing my screen okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We'll get going in just a second. Feel free to put your name and where you're coming in from in the chat. All right. Great. Here we go. Sorry, one second. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today, Heat Pump Water Heaters 101. I'm Joe Wachunas with NBI and Electrify Now here with you as always. I'll introduce our panelist, Greg Holliday, in just a second, but so glad to have you with us for one of the first webinars of Heat Pump Water Heater Week. There is a lot going on this week related to heat pump water heaters. Events every day, lots of things to share. We're trying to amplify this lowly technology that a lot of folks don't think about, but they should. So let's do a quick look at what's going on this week, and then we'll dive into our program. You can see everything that's happening on Heat Pump Water Heater Week. Here is a link and a QR code. We've got events tomorrow on commercial kitchens. On Wednesday, we have a live heat pump water heater installer that our panelist today, Greg, will be at. And we're going to live stream it as well if you want to check that out. And then Thursday is the big day. October 23rd, we've got 40 panelists, 10 sessions all day long, all the content you could think on heat pump water heaters. It's going to be really exciting. So join us for that. And like we said, we're trying to amplify heat pump water heaters. A lot of people don't know they exist. So one good way to do that is to post about them online. We've made some ready-made posts that you can grab right there on your screen about how heat pump water heaters are amazing. And for an extra incentive, we got a couple manufacturers who are giving away a free heat pump water heater and installation for anyone who posts. Not for anyone who posts. You're entered into a raffle if you post. Just make sure you tag HPWH Day or go HPWH so we can track your post. 2 lucky winners will be chosen at the end of Heat Pump Water Heater Day for a free heat pump water heater and an installation. That'll be awesome. Oh, and this was a big news dropping today, the new single from AWHI, HPWH. We wrote a song about heat pump water heaters. We're calling it the first song in the history of the world about a water heater. You can grab it there. We'll also put it in the chat. It's really pretty fun, and there's a music video to go with it. One last thing here, we have a partner toolkit. You can click on this link and you can make your own badge, talk about what kind of market transformation agent you are, have fun with this theme of heat pump water heaters and changing the world. Okay, so today we're talking a whole session on heat pump water heaters. Why hot water? Well, a lot of folks don't know that nearly 20% of home energy use goes to their water heater. Who thinks about their water heater? Very few. And heat pump water heaters are just dramatically efficient and they reduce that energy use dramatically. So today we're going to talk about what are heat pump water heaters, how do they work, how much do they cost to install, how much should I expect to save if I get a heat pump water heater, what do I know to install one, what should I ask a contractor when getting bids, all that good stuff and more. With our panelists. And just not to steal our panelists' thunder, but we're going to talk, this is a nice diagram of a heat pump water heater. We're going to talk about this in depth. It's the same technology as refrigerators. They harvest heat from the surrounding air and just emit cool air. Greg will get into that in depth. But just to highlight how efficient heat pump water heaters are, I get asked this all the time. I bet Greg does too. That people say, is a tankless water heater as efficient as a heat pump water heater, or this water heater, that water heater? Well, just to illustrate that with numbers, every water heater gets rated with what's called a UEF, Uniform Energy Efficiency Factor. And this number tells you for how much energy you put into heating the water, how much you get out. So, for example, an electric storage water heater, you put 1 unit of energy in and you get 0.93 on average to heat your water here. So a little bit is lost in that. in fossil fuel water heating, a good fossil fuel water heater, you'll get, zero point 0.7 of that one unit you put in will actually heat your water. Tankless will get you up higher. This is a really high rating for a tankless, close to 1, that, 1 to 1, you put in a unit energy, you get that out. But check out the heat pump water heater. It's 4 times more efficient, even 5 times more efficient than these other water heaters. It's just leagues more efficient. And it's hard to describe how efficient that is. That's because heat pump technology is so efficient. So yes, it's dramatically more efficient. But the upfront cost for a heat pump water heater can be more expensive than some of these other less efficient technologies. And we'll talk about that and how to lower that upfront cost. Here's Greg will be talking more about this. Annual cost to operate is just dramatically lower, so that your utility bills in most of the country will go down regardless of the type of water heater you're replacing, but especially with that electric resistance water heater on the left. And you're going to save a lot of emissions with your heat pump water heater as well. So there's usually 2 types of water heaters across the country. About half the country's water heaters are electric water heaters, and if you've got one of those, all you have to do is get a heat pump water heater and you just straight swap to a 240 volt heat pump water heater. You've got the electricity on site. It's pretty easy. Greg's going to talk about things you want to think about as far as airspace and whatnot. If you've got a gas water heater, you can run a new electric line, a 240 volt electric line. Or you can, there are 3 models now that are plug-in heat pump water heaters that plug into a standard 120 volt outlet. So you can just plug it in and go. And then finally, here are some of the major manufacturers. One of the most exciting things in this industry is all the manufacturers that are getting into heat pump water heaters. And you can see here some of the major brands. The top 3, the big 3 as we call them, are there on the left: Rheem, A.O. Smith, and Greg's company, Bradford White. And you can see some of their great efficiencies there. We'll send out these slides afterwards. But then Ariston, LG, and Bosch have brought heat pump water heaters to market. And then some of the new entrants to the market over the last year. GE has brought a heat pump water heater to market. Navien Ecological has a split heat pump water heater. Rinnai, Medea, and Sanco 2 is not necessarily new, but they also have a split heat pump water heater. So there's a lot of different products out there, a lot more form factors, a lot more choice happening all the time, which we're excited about. And just a note on the costs, there are still federal tax credits for heat pump water heaters till the end of the year. It's a great time to get that 30% off, up to $2,000. There are some federal rebates coming, depends on the state that you are in. And there are lots of state and utility rebates. We'll put a link to the chat. We did a deep dive on which ones are out there. These are just a look to, a lot of times you can get over $1,000 off your heat pump water heater to help with that higher upfront cost. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce our panelists today. And I should just make a note, today's, throughout Heat Pump Water Heater Week, we are inviting basically all manufacturers to various sessions. But I wanted to invite Greg Holliday to do our Heat Pump Water Heater 101 especially, because Greg holds a unique position. He's part of the Energy Star Manufacturers Action Council. This is a group formed by Energy Star of all the manufacturers, and they do a lot of education on heat pump water heaters in general. And Greg is the de facto spokesperson for this group. He does a lot of the education on Heat Pump Water Heaters 101. He knows a ton about the product. And so he'll be talking to you about his product and heat pump water heaters in general. So we'll get a big deep dive with somebody who knows a lot. And Greg he's been at Bradford White for the last 8.5 years, where he's educating architects, builders, utilities, and lots of folks on the benefits of heat pump water heaters. And he's been in the business for a long time, because previous to that, he worked at GE, which brought the first electric heat pump water heater to market way back in 2008, 2009. So he knows the technology in and out. And I'll say that I had the chance to tour the Bradford White factory in Michigan last year. It was a blast. Greg and I even did a heat pump water heater boogie afterwards, much to Greg's chagrin. I'm going to put that link in the chat as well, so you can check out my tour and our dance afterwards. But without further ado, I'll welcome Greg to share screen. And if you've got questions while he's loading that up, feel free to put them in the Q&A, or so we can track them, and more general comments in the chat. And Greg, great to have you here. Thanks so much. And you're muted, Greg, sorry. There we go. I think you're unmuting.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. So glad to be here, and I appreciate the invitation to be able to come and talk about this because this is my thing. This is what I've been doing since 2009. I'm either the father or the grandfather of the manufacturer's portion of this story because I'm the oldest guy, the only one that's been with this since from the very beginning, from my GE days. And that's what makes this very interesting as I transition to Bradford White. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But to kick this off, I've got an awesome video I want to play everybody that explains and shows the process of moving heat and how that works and creating heat. This is the best video in the industry. It happens to be ours. My marketing team outdid themselves. So I want you guys to see this, and then we'll talk more in depth about this industry. So turn up your sound. Here we go.
Turn up the heat while dialing down your operating costs. The Aerotherm G2 heat pump water heater from Bradford White empowers you to maximize savings and boost your home's efficiency. Consistent performance, reduced energy consumption, and reliable operation, all in one high-efficiency solution that's built to be the best. The power of the Aerotherm G2 heat pump water heater is the power of heat transfer. The fan pulls in air from the surrounding environment and moves it over an evaporator cooler. The heat from the air is transferred to the refrigerant inside the coil, turning it into a vapor. A compressor compresses the vapor, pumping it through the condenser coil that is wrapped around the tank. The vapor transfers the heat to the water. Then, as it cools down, the refrigerant turns back into a liquid. This cycle repeats itself as needed to maintain the temperature set point, all while using a fraction of the energy of traditional water heaters. A real game changer is its ultimate flexibility, performance and efficiency at your fingertips. Heat pump only mode, maximizing savings through optimal energy efficiency. Hybrid standard mode, balancing energy savings while enabling fast recovery. Hybrid plus mode, maximizing recovery by using both heat pump and electrical elements simultaneously. Electric only mode, operating like a standard electric water heater, eliminating airflow. Vacation mode, minimizing energy use and maximizing savings by adjusting temperature settings to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Manufactured in America, using the finest materials and components from around the world. With easy installation, minimal maintenance, and long-lasting performance built in. It's time to get warmer, greener, and smarter. It's time for a Bradford White Aerotherm G2 Hybrid Electric Heat Pump Water Heater.
There you go. Now you have some understanding about heat pump water heaters and how they actually work. And that is the process of moving from liquid to a vapor and back again. And I want you to just write these words down. If anybody ever asks you what makes this so good, moving heat is cheaper and easier than creating heat. And that really is that part of the story. And this is why my career at GE was such a great launching pad for this, because we built heat pumps every day. We just called them refrigerators. And refrigerators take heat from the inside of a box that you can put a hot pot of deer chili in, like I'll be doing in another couple of weeks here on this farm in Kentucky. And it will say, I'm going to take the heat out of that box and I'm going to relocate it on the outside underneath and blow that warm air into your kitchen. So heat pumps in your kitchen called refrigerators will make your kitchen a little bit warmer when it runs. And those refrigerators run how long? About 70% of the time. So you're talking about a product that is tried and true in the house, something that can be trusted by the homeowner because it's not really a new technology. GE was probably the best company at that point to come out with this technology. I had the privilege of introducing it in 2009 to the United States and opening the doors with conversations to utilities, energy providers, rebates, builders, you name it. I was the guy out there churning that market. Competitors then came in a few years later. We introduced the product on behalf of Bradford White in 2015 when they needed a heat pump water heater to compete in the 80-gallon market. And then in 2015 and then 2016, GE got bought by High Air and got out of the heat pump water heater business. Bradford White hired me, bought the GE plant in Louisville, Kentucky, where I live, and moved it to Middleville, Michigan to continue manufacturing the only American-made heat pump water heater. You'll actually see that on the flag that is on the product. But as I said, this is not really new. This is an old refrigerator technology, and everybody's got one in their garage with a beer and the soft drinks in it. It's 20, 30, 40 years old, still working, never been serviced one time. That same compressor, condenser, and evaporator attached to the most reliable form of heating water, and that's an electric water heater. Yeah, no moving parts, heating elements, thermostat, tank. You put those two things together and you have the birth of a heat pump water heater that says, I can do two things in life. I can provide exactly the same volume of hot water as the electric water heater that I'm replacing. And that's what it was designed for, to replace the 50% of American homes that have electric water heaters today. And in doing that, to use 70% less electricity. That's 3,000 kilowatt hours less every year. And GE bumped it up to a 10-year warranty that the whole industry has adapted. And we probably can carry that on with what we've released through Bradford White. And now we've just released our first generation product. We call it the G2. We've been manufacturing the other product for almost 9 years, the G1. Now we're in the G2, which has made some vast improvements that I'll talk about in a little bit. I'm not going to be one big commercial for Bradford White. I'm going to tell you about the industry, and I'm going to pepper in the things that we are doing that are noteworthy for you guys to be able to hear about. So that process, I've been teaching this for 16 years. Electronic thermistors pressed against the tank detect 1 degree temperature changes. So when somebody gets in to take a shower, you push cold water in through the dip tube to get hot water out of the top of the tank. And the first reaction of a hybrid 240 volt model is to turn on the heat pump, first line of defense, because it doesn't know how much hot water you're going to use. So it's monitoring temperatures and using an algorithm that collects 5 data points to decide, is the heat pump all I need to do? So the heat pump says I can pull warm air in through the top, warm air being anything 35 degrees or higher, attaching that heat to the Freon gas or liquid, boiling that, compressing it, and then releasing the heat with the condenser coil wrapped around the outside of the tank, never touching the water, which means because 85% of this country has hard water, it never has to be descaled on the heat exchanger side. About 2 inches of high density foam wrapped around this tank to create an R19 energy blanket, only loses about 5 degrees in 10 hours. And the water heater says that means I don't run during that time. I only run when somebody's actually taking a shower. The heating elements are still there. So if Junior jumps in and says, Dad, my job in life every day is to use every drop of hot water, then the water heater says, with that algorithm monitoring the ambient air temperature, the tank temperatures at top and bottom, and the sensors on the compressor, condenser, and evaporator, it decides when and if it needs to add in the hybrid mode that upper heating element. Now, the best part of this is it's Energy Star verified by the DOE for that rating on the front, that UEF, Uniform Energy Factor, that says this water heater is about 420% efficient. So for every $1 you spend to heat water, you get $4.20 in actual hot water on my 65-gallon model. That is the story of a heat pump water heater, is that every other form of heating water loses money except the heat pump water heater. It gives more than it takes. So because it still has the heating elements, it says I can provide that same volume of hot water because the response is exactly the same when it needs it. But when it doesn't need to recover the entire tank, it uses the heat pump, draws about 550 watts of power. That's 5.5 100-watt light bulbs. Yeah, that's it. But when it adds the heating elements, now it's giving that full recovery, just like the 4,500-watt heating elements would do in a standard electric water heater. So the difference is this: there's only one form of water heating that's above a line for payback, and that's a heat pump water heater, because it gives more than it gets. And where is the proof for that? It's always, always, always on the energy guide. So we teach contractors to sell using the energy guide. Your water heater today says $494. If I put another one in just like that, it's going to say $494. But if I switch you to a heat pump water heater that is more expensive, it's going to use about $400 less in power. And as a result of that, you're going to put that money towards paying for this water heater, which means every year it's going to save that $400 with a 10-year warranty. That's going to be about $4,000, which means it pays for itself. Not just paying for an upgrade, it pays for itself. So what should the market be doing with heat pump water heaters? Replacing as many electric water heaters as possible, since half of American homes have those. This was never designed for fuel switching, because the payback story drastically changes when you've got to spend thousands of dollars upgrading electricity into a house, being able to do things that are not set up for a water heater to be replaced, and it slows things down. So if you want contractors to be invested in this, and you want distributors to be invested, look at those markets like the TVA, where it's a $1,300 rebate, and about 80%, 90% of their homes are electric homes. That was always the first goal of this, is to go after electric to electric change out, because the same 30 amp circuit is used, and it just makes sense to get somebody involved that way. Now, the lineup looks vast, because you do have the 240 volt workhorses of the industry, the tried and true bulletproof stuff that says, take one out, put one in. Homeowners are always happy. You've got 120 volt models as well. 120 volt models were designed to replace gas water heaters, which don't have the capacity at that point in the home to put a 240 volt electric water heater in. So there's a lot of caution around that. Gas water heaters outperform electric water heaters of any kind in recovery. When you put a heat pump only model in, you have to make sure you follow the manufacturer's instructions for how many people could be in the house, and set the right expectation that it's going to take hours to recover, not just a short period of time, because you don't have that 4,000, 4,500 watt heating element. There are proper applications for those, but you have to follow what the manufacturer says, because their name is the one that's on the line if it goes into a house with 6 people and they're used to a tankless water heater, and now they get nothing close to recovery as that. Then you've got split systems, where you can have an outdoor unit. Those might run off of CO2. Now you've got a low GWP gas that's part of that, and you've got a tank only inside and the heat pump on the outside. Lots more of those are entering into the market, as you can imagine right now. But I want you to always focus on 240 volt. That's the bulletproof one. That's the one that protects the industry. That's the one that protects the manufacturers, because it delivers exactly what it says it's going to. Now, manufacturers like us, we all have commercial product. More that's coming in development as well. So you're going to see new things added in 2026 from several folks, I'm sure. And you're going to see product that can go outside on the roof, beside the building, that'll handle, in some cases, up to 300-400 apartments to be able to do that, and then smaller systems. Where can you put a heat pump water heater? You can put it essentially wherever a standard electric water heater is today. It can be in the basement. People say, well, gosh, Greg, you're sucking out some of the heat from the house, which means now I'm having to replace that with my HVAC. And I always say, that's one of the biggest myths in the industry, because your basement is the coolest part of your house in January and July, because it's 8 feet underground, which means that it's always cooler underground. That's free heat. And where a water heater sits by the HVAC product in an unconditioned space in a basement, that just means that it's using that 60, 65 degree air, 50, 55 degree air, anything above 35. And yes, it's going to take that heat out, and it's going to off gas air that's going to make that space about 3 to 5 degrees cooler when it runs. But you're not sucking that air into your HVAC. The returns are upstairs. The supplies are upstairs. So you're heating and cooling the house upstairs where you live, not where your water heater is actually sitting. So unless you step downstairs and feel that difference, it doesn't change the performance of the home. Just ask NIA. They did a study on this to prevent or to essentially approve whether venting was going to be required, and decided that the cooling effect, even if it was upstairs or down, was not enough that it should require to be vented. Always remember, if you vent one, you push air out, you got to pull air in. So if you're in Minnesota, that's a problem. But if it's in a basement in Minnesota, it's going to have enough heat that it's going to be able to compensate for that and still provide savings. It won't be as high a UEF in the wintertime, but it will come back up in the summertime and balance itself out. Putting them in garage is the same thing. California is full of garage installations. Florida is full of garage installations. You've got plenty of warmer air. You're dehumidifying at the same time, taking out a couple of quarts of moisture. You're being able to do that without even having to neutralize that, because it's drip water that can be tied to the HVAC system, which makes the installation even faster and easier to do. Laundry rooms are great spots for them. If builders are on here and listening, I like to see them in laundry rooms, because you got a heat producer and a moisture producer and a dryer and a water heater that says, I love that, and I can take that right out. Closets with louvered doors, always acceptable wherever they are. And remember that cooling effect that it has, 3 to 5 degrees in a 700 cubic foot space, is limited to when it actually is doing something like heating water. So about 3 hours in the morning, the heat pump water heater is going to run insulated to an R19, losing 5 degrees in 10 hours. It means it doesn't run all day long. And then it's going to kick back on 2, 3, maybe 4 hours in the evening, and then it's not going to run all night. Sound. This is one of the things we have questions about, because somebody decided that sound levels for heat pump water heaters ought to be measured. And I'm thinking, no other water heater has ever had a sound rating on it. Tankless doesn't have one. You didn't have one on power vents, which can sound like a jet engine when they take off. But for some reason, this became an issue, which draws attention to it, which makes people think there must be a sound problem. And that's not true. All heat pump water heaters are less than 50 decibels in sound. The first one that I had in the industry was about 55. It was the same sound level as a dishwasher in your kitchen that you hear every day. So don't think that sound is an issue. Yes, if you strap one with an earthquake strap, sometimes to walls in a house that are studded, sometimes with some manufacturer's product, you might pick up a vibration. But that's the exception, not the rule. It's a compressor sound. It's a fan sound. It's very low. Most people don't even know that it's on or running in the house. Now, these are the devices that are often associated with a heat pump water heater. Mixing valves allow you to elevate a tank temperature of a gas or an electric water heater to a higher temperature of 140 degrees, and then safely dial it down to 120 or 25 so that it delivered to the shower without any scalding. Now, the valves in showers for years now have been anti-scalding, so that's not typically a problem. That just really is focused on hand washing. Recirculation systems, every manufacturer is on the same page when it comes to recirc. We don't mind using a recirc as long as it's a smart recirc. A smart recirc has a button that says it's now 6 in the morning, time to take a shower. My wife steps in, pushes the button in about 15 seconds. My demand system that you see right here, this ACT system, circulates 70 feet of water line. When she turns the shower on, boom, it is steaming hot water right there at the shower. Every manufacturer will approve that type, but they do that with a caution, because if you don't put one in that is a demand, then you're going to make this recirc line run all the time, which means the water heater is going to continually run and try to reheat that last 4 or 5 degrees, and it's never going to turn off, which means the manufacturer is then going to say, take that pump out and put one in that is smart. So keep that in mind as you look at these. Leak detection, you're going to see leak detection on a lot of manufacturers' product, and then you're going to see an option here for whole home leak detection. Rather than just protecting a water heater, one device that most people have never had a leak problem with, let's protect the whole house. I've always recommended this for the last couple of years. And then last year, Bradford White decided to buy FlowLogic, the company I happened to pick as being the best. I didn't know our CEO liked that much, and bought it. So now I've got leak detection for a faucet, for a water valve on a dishwasher, on a refrigerator, a hose on a washing machine. Anything, a toilet that leaks, it will shut everything down and protect the house. CTA 2045, JA 13, these are things that are associated with the Wi-Fi communication Every manufacturer except the split system that's outside has that ability. So utilities, if they want to load control, have the ability to make that happen. Now, I do always remind people, when you're load controlling a heat pump water heater, you're chasing 550 watts of power. 550 watts. And if you happen to be putting mixing valves on them in your state, that means the water heater is already being elevated to a higher temperature in most areas, because if a manufacturer like us is replacing a gas water heater for a homeowner, we're going to tell the contractor to bump it up to 140. That hedges the bet of running out and having a slower recovery with an electric water heater versus a gas water heater, which means it's already thermal storage for the purpose of making sure the homeowner is happy. And that is our goal as manufacturers. So always bear that in mind, that these have communications devices for them. And yeah, you can have a nice app on your phone where you can talk to the water heater. I can see my energy usage. I can change my temperatures and stuff on it. But most utilities don't chase 550 watts of power. Properly sizing is probably one of the most important things we teach contractors, especially if they're operating in a market that's doing fuel switching from gas to electric. In that case, 50-gallon electric, 50-gallon heat pump water heater, or electric water heater of any kind is not equivalent, because gas water heaters have a 40,000 BTU blowtorch. Electric water heaters have a 4,500 watt heating element, and that's it. So always remember that it should be sized according to what the manufacturer says. You can come to my sizing chart on Bradford White. We simply ask for the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, not the number of occupants. Why? Because two people could be in a 4-bedroom house because the kids all left. The house is empty. You don't size it to the people, you size it to the potential of what could be there. Now, that means a contractor should still have a conversation if he sees a 3-bedroom house with 9 people in it. That means he's got to oversize the water heater anyway, because of what he sees and observes in the conversations that he's having. But when you put this information in, specifically on my sizing chart, we're going to tell you what the percentage is that the water heater is going to provide based on the information you put in. And in this case, and my little red line got moved there, this particular recommendation says that it will cover 118%. 18% is the fudge factor. I like to see bigger fudge factors than that. So I tell contractors, I want to see in the 120s, because nobody ever complains about having too much hot water, but they sure will if they run out. So look at the second recommendation, and it's going to tell you that it would go up, if you went to an 80, to about 132%. Now you got extra fudge for Christmas. Anything that's going to happen where an extra couple of showers is not going to hurt anything. Here's a quick peek at a plant where you can see how these are made. It is an electric water heater that gets turned into an electric heat pump water heater, literally wrapping that condenser line on the outside of the tank and then putting the casing around it in foam, filling that up and adding the heat pump to the top. Now, this is a plant that we have in Middleville, Michigan. It's the only plant you can see in the United States where heat pump water heaters are actually made. So you're looking at an American-made product right there just before it goes out the door. We just released in the spring of this year our new G2 model with the same top connections, but we improved the venting on it to get both the intake and the output on the top so that you can have zero clearance on the side of the water heater. Now, these are some of the Bradford White exclusives that you won't see anywhere else. I'm obligated to tell you some of ththose things, that we're a 4.20 UEF. That is one of the highest in the industries, that we build these in the United States, that we have the only multilingual display. Yeah, our engineers, really smart people, came up with the idea of maybe we ought to be able to put this in French, English, and Spanish, Canadian French specifically, because we sell a lot of product across the border. So a contractor walking up to this can turn it on, change the language to whatever he needs to install it, and or leave it in whatever language the homeowner would want to have for that. We also have the only heat pump water heaters with microband coating on the tanks, 8-inch venting on the top, 100% serviceable, including the sealed system, less than 50 decibels in sound. And I don't give a number for that specifically because there is no DOE standard for sound testing a water heater. So we stick with the fact that it's going to always be below 50 because that is the requirement. And we are the only manufacturer that has a dedicated heat pump water heater line and technical services 24/7, because We support this product for contractors no matter what coast you live on, and we never close. Now, why is some of this stuff more important? Because today, you don't have to put them in, but in 3.5 years, when standard electric water heaters that are above 35 gallons go away as a result of the changes that are coming down the pike here that are already done and approved, then that means the installer in your market is going to now be faced with walking in to buy an electric water heater and find that it's an electric heat pump water heater. Now, I say that's important. You'd think after 16 years in the industry that installers would be putting these in everywhere, but they're not. They're not, because a lot of installers are resistant to change, thinking this is something new. Nobody understands it until they hear that it's a refrigerator married with an electric water heater. It's not a new technology. It's two old things being put together. So we've got a lot of them out there now that are putting them in because they've got a very unique model to do right now. It's called proactive sales replacement. Today, water heaters are only changed when one thing happens. It quits. And then they expect to see the same thing go back in again. That's not what this is all about. This is about being able to teach the homeowner today that the water heater in their house. So if a contractor goes out to fix the sink, I'll say, pull your phone out, play that video, hand it to the homeowner so that they can see that, and then say, let me have just 5 minutes of your time to tell you why we need to take out this water heater that's only 93% efficient and put this one in that's 420 and save you about $400, $500 a year more if it's an 80 gallon. And let me show you how you can get the federal tax credit now before the end of the year, the $1,300 rebate from one utility. It could be $800, $1,000 in another market. And let me show you how fast, because you're going to pay this much minus those rebates that are instant rebates as they should be. It's going to buy the price down, and then it's going to save. And oh, look, in just 3 years, 4 years, you're going to get all your money back. That's never happened. That's never happened for anybody with an HVAC system. It's never happened for a water heater, because this is a one-time in history event where we're going to step somebody from the 93% efficient water heater and not have to go through all the incremental changes that the HVAC market has had to go through for the last 30 years. We're going to take it in one step, which means the homeowner is going to have a one-time cash cow that says, I get all of my investment back. Now, the next time they replace it after these are mandatory, it's going to just be a little bit better each time, a little bit better. There won't be any more of these huge jumps. So this is why contractors should be taking advantage of this now, and why they need to learn the soft skills. The soft skills are real simple. Explain it to the homeowner. The soft skills for a utility are real simple. Put up the two energy guides, electric water heater, heat pump water heater. Let people see that on a billboard of what the difference is between the operating costs, and let them make a business decision as to why they would want that. And then when the market gets saturated with a whole bunch of these, now you have the opportunity to do some gas conversions where the math doesn't always work out for a payback, but it gets very close in some markets depending on how much work has to be done electrically to the house. But now you got a confident pool of contractors that have been installing and have that confidence. And I tell contractors, reward a homeowner who, once you put one in, tell them, be prepared. I want you to put something up on Facebook about me putting this in and you liking it, because in 3.5 years, there are going to be people out there putting messages on Facebook that say, my contractor just said I have to replace my electric water heater and I have to put this thing in called a heat pump water heater. Does anybody know anything about these? You want hands going up everywhere saying, John's Plumbing and HVAC did mine 3 years ago and I've already got all my money back, because I took advantage of the tax credit. I took advantage of the rebate. Because what's going to happen in 3.5 years to those rebates? They're going to be gone. So I'm encouraging utilities to go out and begin the finance programs that say, if the higher cost of the product becomes a blocker, make it pay online with your utility bill, make it easy to be able to get one, and let it pay for itself like we do with the cell phones, where it's a few bucks a month. And now people have no reason to not feel comfortable about putting this in. So that's the story of the industry. That's where we've come in the last 16 years. And I can honestly say, I think the best is still yet to come, because it's going to get real exciting when the Wild West kicks in and contractors have to start doing it. My only concern is this. If they didn't learn in the previous 16 years, are they going to end up going out there and trying to do it on their own because they didn't want to learn and now they're faced in a crunch to have to do it? The nuances of installation are not sophisticated, but it does need air. It needs 700 cubic feet of air. Zero clearance makes this a whole lot easier now that we and other manufacturers have made some of those changes. 24/7 technical assistance is going to help contractors with that because we make them look like rock stars if they have to make a repair by talking them through it, sending them the parts, telling them to call us before they even have to go to the house so they know whether they need to go or do they need to send the plumber or the HVAC guy, because this is a market that is evolving into something great and beautiful. And that's why I stayed in this industry all this time, because this was the best job I've ever had. Joe, I love telling this story, man. Thanks.
I share that with you. Best job ever promoting this great technology. Thanks, Greg. That's great stuff and a lot of good questions, folks. Keep your questions in the Q&A. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Greg, maybe we start. You were closing there a little bit on the airspace. Let's chat a little bit about that. Folks were talking about that airspace. Talk to us about when you. That 700 cubic feet of air, what does that look like room size? And how often do people really, like, if they have to duct a heat pump water heater? Is it not very often? Sometimes? Yeah. Tell me about that a little bit.
700 cubic feet is a 10 by 10 by 7 area. You just measure height times width times depth. And I literally teach that to contractors that if they can come up with 700 cubic feet, they're fine. Every manufacturer has drawings and things and installation instructions. There are some that will allow down at 450 cubic feet, but that's with a caveat because 450 cubic feet is not where the energy guide test is done. And that standard will also provide about a 12 to 15% reduction in performance. The more air you have, the higher the performance. The less air you have, the lower it goes. I and most manufacturers do require 700 cubic feet, so it does exactly what the energy guide says it's going to do.
Got it. And then how about that? How often do you see, and what are the cases when it needs to be vented?
Ducting is almost never done. It's got to be one of those unusual situations. People always think, well, I want to get that cool air out, or I want to avoid a problem upstairs someplace. And it's like, okay, if you push the air out, you now have to balance the equation and pull air in. So if you're in Colorado, which is where this question comes up the most, how often in the year, how many months in the year is it going to be below 35 degrees where you live? And they're like, oh, about 3 or 4 months. Well, check off the box that says the heat pump is not going to run during that time. So the idea is that if it's in a space that you're not living in, if it's not in a closet in your bedroom, if it's in a closet in the hall, that means we don't want the thermostat across from it. But that means that when you walk down the hall for 2 or 3 hours in the morning and 2 or 3 hours in the evening, you're going to feel a cooler effect right there than you will any place else in the house. But the NEA testing that was done through Bonneville Power with 2 test homes proved that it was a negligible difference in the performance of the home, enough that the venting requirement was never made. Unfortunately, that was after all the manufacturers like us got scared and said, they're going to make us have to vent it, so we better put something on. That was one of those things that added cost to the water heater that really was not necessary.
Yeah, I can speak to that too, Greg. I mean, we have our heat pump water heater in our utility closet right near our living room, and for years we had it ducted, and then we just did a remodel, and we're like, we're going to try without the ducts. We took the ducts off, and it's in a closet, so we put some wall grates, so it's like it's pulling air from behind the fridge and then going into the pantry. Yeah. And so you can also do a louvered door, like Greg was talking about. But, like Greg says, it's run 6 to 8 hours a day. It's cooler in the winter, but nothing, that dramatic. And it's really a nothing burger from my perspective. And in the summer, you get that free AC. And that's only for 25% of homes that have a utility closet like mine does with the water heater in it. Most homes are basements or garages. And maybe we go to that, Greg. Tell us a little bit. A lot of folks were asking about a basement installation. We hear this all the time. Oh, is it going to cool my basement too much? Is it going to reduce the heating or it's increase the heating load as well? Talk about basement installation specifically.
Hot air rises and cold air falls, which means that if the water heater is in the basement, that column of air in 3 hours will never be enough that it comes up and somehow pushes through the floor and the carpeting or the hardwood to where you say, oh, I can feel it's cold upstairs. Remember, we're talking a 5,000 BTU air conditioner. That's a window unit. When I was at GE, we called that a carry cool. It had a handle on it, and you put it in your bedroom window, and it had to run 24 hours a day to keep that room cold. If you turned it off 3 hours in the morning and then turned it off all day, and then you came home and it's 95 degrees out and you turned it on for 3 or 4 more hours and turned it off, nobody would have said that bedroom was air conditioned because it wasn't going to have enough time to run. These are the same way.
Yeah, and I would say Maine is the leading state for heat pump water heater installations, right? And it's all water heaters in the basement. So these are not, they're perfect for cold climates, don't have to be.
Better to dehumidify that area naturally. I run a dehumidifier in my basement. I've got a walkout ranch. Never knew I needed one until somebody gave me one to test one day. And I was like, wow, there's more moisture in here than I would have dreamed. And I built a double studded, double insulated, real tight house. But my heat pump water heater now takes part of that away. And then mine's even hooked to geothermal. So I get the benefit of a heat pump backing up a heat pump that's the most efficient way to heat and cool my house using a ground radiator.
Nice. And then maybe the last kind of common spot is a garage. Any tips on the installations in a garage? Is it just pretty straightforward?
Pretty straightforward. Make sure it's away from your car, obviously. But if your water heater's in there, it's going to take one out and put one in. And, all that means is that in the summertime, when the garage is warmer, it's going to be above the performance because these are tested at 68 degrees ambient temperature for the DOE test, running 57-degree water through them, simulating a 24-hour water draw for a family size of a low, medium, or high. And then that's in the hybrid mode. Yeah, just putting it in heat pump, everybody always thinks that's going to make it save a whole lot more. I'm like, no, about this much more. Because it's designed already for the heat pump to carry the bulk of the load and only tap the heating element if it needs to. So in the summertime, it's going to exceed its efficiency. And in the wintertime, it's going to be a little bit less. If it happens to drop for an hour or two or a day or two below 35, that just means it's an electric water heater and the heating elements are doing their thing.
Got it. One other person was asking about, what about outdoors? Is it inefficient to install a heat pump water heater outdoors? Any thoughts on that?
That happens a lot in California because they've got some moderate climate zones where water heaters are in the garage, but they're concerned that they need to be able to move it out just to give them more space, especially if they're bumping up to an 80-gallon and the space at the end of the car is not enough that they feel like they're going to not bump into it. So putting it outside means it's got to be in a container of some sort that keeps it weatherproof because every manufacturer requires that. Now, it's easier now. Usually you had to try to put a louver door on. My G1 unit, I always say you can't let it get wet. It can't blow air or wetness in. With my G2 unit, I've got 2 8-inch round ducts on the top that can come out and go out on opposite sides. And that can be a full weather tight. It doesn't have to circulate air inside if it's going to push and pull on its own, which means I would approve that for an installation.
So that would look like some sort of closet on the outside that folks would buy, some metal container.
Yes.
Okay, great. So talk to us a little bit about contractors. And somebody was reporting that they're in California. They're struggling to find reliable businesses that have the knowledge to install these. This is common, right? You were saying it across the country. Some are really embracing this, lots are not. What's your recommendation on finding a contractor that doesn't talk someone out of a heat pump water heater that knows what they're doing?
Use the manufacturer's contractor finder. Use the Energy Star because that's how we started off with the Energy Star Manufacturers Action Council. We do 2 sessions a month in California and have anywhere from 50 to 150 contractors on to teach them that. The complication in California is really this. One, the money is there and then the money's not. So it's the tech funds that either are supplied or they run out because the HVAC side of the business sometimes sucks up the 30, 40, $50 million that might be available. But it's also the complication of going into a house and not knowing, what am I looking at? Do they have a panel box that's full, which means now I got to get in touch with the power company who has to now upgrade the whole system to the house, which means a whole lot of money? Or do they have a 240-volt line behind their dryer that I can now move and reallocate because there is a spot in the box? And it adds complication. The good news about California is they've got 1 million all-electric homes. I proposed 16, I'll say probably 14 years ago, that should be the first bogey you go after, because contractors that can put them in every day, that's what they're looking for. Not looking for a start stop, not looking for I think I can just have my electrician do something and then you find out the whole panel has to be updated. They need simple, fast stuff, or they're going to just keep doing what they always do and put in exactly what was there, because they know exactly how long it takes to take that out and put the new one in. And their goal is to put as many water heaters in a day as their guys can possibly do. So talk to the contractor. If you see them on the Energy Star Contractor Finder, that means we as manufacturers trained them for proper installation, submitted their name to the DOE to be added to the list. So those are pretty reliable resources for you to go after. There just may not be as many, but reach out to the manufacturer of your choice and ask them, who in my market do you have that's experienced? Because I would never send you to a guy that's never done it. I would want somebody that I have walked through and taught this even myself.
Right. And I put the Energy Star water heater installer finder. Greg, this is an interesting one, and I think one that scares people. Roberto's saying, I have friends who installed a heat pump water heater, and it's only two people in the house, but they took consecutive showers, and the second person ran out of hot water. Can you talk about that issue? She's saying, sometimes my kids and family visit, and we wouldn't want to run out of hot water. I've got four-person family, and I don't, I rarely, if ever, have this happen to me. But what do you say to somebody who said their friends had hot water run out?
Well, the first thing I would ask them, because I notice this all the time, the water heater, what temperature do you have it set to? Because every manufacturer has to ship the water heater at 120 or 125, which is an anti-scalding temperature. And people somehow assume that must be the temperature I'm supposed to leave it on. And I'm thinking, well, every time you turn your oven on, it's set to 350. Did you notice that? That doesn't mean that that's the only temperature it has. That means that's a median starting point that you can go up or down from. A heat pump water heater, electronic, can be adjusted from 100 to 140 degrees. So you have a variation on that because you need to match that to your family's showering and water usage habits. I've got 80 gallon in my house, but if I had a 50 gallon for four people, I'd be watching every day, because I don't have water savers in Kentucky. We get high water flow on my farm. You take a shower, you can feel the water, because water is real cheap and easy here. But making sure that you match that tank temperature to what the homeowner actually needs. You should not run out on 2 showers on any electric water heater. And the fact that it says electric heat pump, it's not the heat pump that's not keeping up. It's the temperature, because it's still an electric water heater with the same first hour rating.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it shouldn't happen on 2 showers. And I mean, to your point earlier, we, especially in the winter when the recovery times are maybe a little slower on the heat pump mode, we turn our water heater up higher to get that extra storage. And all our showers have that anti-scald device. And you said, that's been standard for years. So even though it's a hotter temperature, you can also do the mixing valve as you talked about.
Yes.
Earlier. Yeah, great. All right, let's see here. Sorry, lots of good questions here, and I was. Oh yeah, so someone's asking you, and you said this a little bit, but maybe this is a good chance to underline it a little bit. A lot of homes have recirculation systems, but maybe just another minute about how you don't want just the standard recirculation system with a heat pump water heater.
Yeah, recirculation systems come in a couple of configurations. One is it just recirculates 24 hours a day, just in case at 2 o'clock in the morning you decide to get up and take a shower for some random reason. And those are called hydronic heat on the East Coast, because that means your pipes are hot all the time, emitting heat. In the wintertime, you might feel that on the wall, say that's good where that pipe is, but the rest of the time it's working against your house. We as manufacturers want you to have something that is smart. Now, somebody could say, well, I've got one of those with a timer where I can put a little pin in that says, what time do you get up in the morning? 6 o'clock. All right, at 5:15, 5:45, we're going to turn the water heater on and recirculate this line one time. And then you may say, we'll do that again at noon. And then I might do it again at 5 o'clock when you come home. If you had something like that, the manufacturers would all say that's okay. But it's the ones that want to keep it charged all the time to any specific temperature. You don't hear your electric water heater run because it's silent, but you will hear this. And we as manufacturers always know when a not smart system, a dumb system is put in, because the homeowner will call us and say, I got this water heater installed 2 weeks ago and I swear it's never turned off once. And all we got to ask is one question. Did they put a recirc in? Yes, they did. Unplug it. And then call us back in 3 days and tell us, did the water heater turn? Well, yes, it did. But now I have to wait for hot water. Get him to come back and put one of those smart ones in. That ACT model that I have, I recommend only because I have one. They gave that to me. I told them I would never talk about it if it didn't work, and I'd send it back. It's a Grundfos pump. It works like a champ. It's American made. It's one of the best in the industry. I would give that a recommendation.
And just to put in a plug for Heat Pump Water here today, we are going to have ACT and Grundfos on our water recirculation session. Don't miss that. You can geek out on this all day. Greg, talk to us about the different modes. You talked a little bit about there's heat pump mode, there's like efficiency or energy saver mode, but there's not too much difference. Say a little bit more about that kind of
Sure.
modes.
The hybrid mode is where it's Energy Star tested. That's where the guide on the front of the water heater says you get the most performance out of the water heater and you get the best balance of energy usage. The goal being by a manufacturer testing it in that, because we have to ship it in the operating mode that it's tested, is we don't want the homeowner to complain that it takes too long to recover. It should be identical as the electric water heater it was designed to replace. Now, if you put it in heat pump only, now you're cutting out the heating elements, which means if I take a couple of 3 showers in the morning and my house is emptied, I've got all day for it to recover, and it's going to take several hours for it to recover at 10 to 15 gallons an hour recovery versus 24 gallons an hour in recovery. So it's a matter of whether you're trying to squeeze that out, and the possibility of ever taking a cold shower, and you're going to say, for the extra $5 I shaved off a year, because $117 a year is not much in operating costs. And if you got $5 more off of that, or 10, and you had to take a couple of cold showers, I'm going to ask you, was it worth it? So,
Right.
And then you've also got, on my model, you've got Hybrid Plus. Hybrid mode is what every manufacturer uses, because that's one of the NEA standards that says heat pump and only add the upper heating element. They wanted to limit the time that heating element was on to recover the top part of the tank where you're still drawing out. Hybrid Plus, we're saying to the homeowner, if it's Christmas time, you need a deep heating recovery. So we make our water heater in a way where it says heat pump first, and then it's looking at the algorithm and it's saying, how deep did you get? Because it can either put the upper heating element on or go to the bottom heating element and deep heat the tank from the bottom up to give you a higher volume and a faster recovery. You do what you need to meet the needs of the house.
Gotcha. We are getting, and we're getting up to our time, but we are getting some questions on the 120 volt. And before I turn it over to you, Greg, I did want to highlight that Greg's alma mater, GE, came out with an interesting product that is both 120 and 240 volt. That's the first we've seen of this kind of product. So that means you can plug in the water heater, if you're replacing a gas into that, and then you can take your time and upgrade the electric resistance later and run a 240 volt line to that water heater. Greg, do you think that's where the 120 volt might be headed, where you have that capability of both the 120 volt quick plug-in if you need it, and then you can upsize the electric line later with the 240 volt? Tell us your thoughts on that.
It is a great idea. I mean, it ships with a power cord, and then you can take that off and you can wire it. It automatically adapts. The question will be, and I honestly have not seen the cost to know whether it's more of a premium cost that you have to pay for that flexibility, but being convertible does add a lot to it and being able to make that happen. Otherwise, you're with a 120 volt model, which, you got to get that right out of the box. And I know the guys that make those would say that because it's not designed for new construction. That should tell you something. They're doing it only in places where there's no other choice for the homeowner to be able to do something. And, you always think in terms of electrification is this: is the homeowner's bill going to go up or is it going to go down when they make a switch and fuel switch? And that depends on the state that you're in, because some states, the cost of electricity, I'm at 14 cents here in Kentucky, which is the national average, but in some states you might be spending 30 or 40 cents during peak time. So going off of gas, which is cheaper, and going to a higher cost of electricity, even with a heat pump water heater, means that the net for that homeowner could actually mean that their cost of living goes up. So you got to do your homework on that part of it. The energy guides are all based on 14 cents a kilowatt hour. And you can normalize that by looking at the number of kilowatt hours a heat pump water heater uses, which is about 800 to 900,
So
and
low.
multiply that.
Yeah, 800 to 900 kilowatt hours, quite low, which is amazing. I always love that. All right, well, we've got just a minute or so left, Greg. What if somebody's thinking about a heat pump water heater before the tax credits go out? What's their first step? What should they be? What's the top thing to leave them with to get their process started?
Well, if you've got a plumber, obviously you want to talk to him and see what he's selling and what he's putting in, because that's somebody hopefully that you know and trust. We happen to be a manufacturer that only sells to plumbing contractors through distribution and not through retail, because we believe, and I think you might as well, that professional installation, here I'm saying this, I know Joe's, I think, probably put one or two in his life. But professional installation, making sure you got the air and the clearances and the serviceability and all of those things, I think is important. But sizing, go to a manufacturer's sizing chart, go to either one of the top 3 or 4 that you like out there, and just see. If you go to mine, it's called a right spec sizing tool, and it will tell you what percentage that it'll cover. And then look at the manufacturer and the warranties. Mine is, again, the only one that is 100% serviceable, including the sealed system. I think GE, when they fully release, will also have that ability too. That means that even the compressor can be replaced and all the parts are free for 10 years, 1 year in home labor. And then, look at where they're manufactured, because that sometimes makes a difference to people depending on where you live, as to made in America or made somewhere else.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks for that. That was a lot of great info, Greg. Folks were asking, we will send slides and recording out just as quick as we can, and keep sending us your questions throughout the week. Join us for some other Heat Pump Water Heater Day webinars. Huge thanks to Greg for being on today. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you at the next one. Thanks so much.
Thank you.